The glass-walled conference room shimmered under the noon sun, 40 floors above downtown Chicago. Screens glowed blue with lines of code and error alerts. A red message pulsed across the main display. System failure, core network overload. Dozens of engineers stared helplessly. Then came the voice that cut through the tension like glass. "Can someone explain why a janitor is standing near my server rack?" The woman speaking didn't even look up from her tablet. Her name was Alicia Voss, Chief Operations Officer of NorthLink Data Systems. Her suit was immaculate. Her diamond brooch gleamed under the fluorescent light, and her reputation for never being wrong filled the room before she even spoke again. Across the room, Noah Brooks froze, mop handle still in his hands. His gray maintenance uniform made him nearly invisible most days, but not now. "I asked a question," Alicia said, her tone sharp as static. "Or maybe you thought cleaning fluid can fix fiber optics." Laughter broke out among the younger analysts. Someone whispered that he probably didn't even know what a router was. Noah said nothing. His eyes drifted toward the screen where network nodes blinked in chaos. Then he spoke quietly. "Your routers are fine, ma'am. It's the timing loop between the American and European data centers. You're running two different clock protocols." For a moment, the room fell silent. Alicia turned to him with a cold smile. "Oh, the janitor has diagnosed what our engineers couldn't fix in 3 weeks? Perfect. Tell you what, Mr. Brooks. If you can repair it before the German investors arrive in 2 hours, I'll make you chief engineer. But when you fail, security will escort you out for good." Gasps moved across the room. The stakes were no joke. $120 million in contracts depended on that server's stability. Someone muttered that even the lead technician couldn't isolate the drift. Alicia folded her arms. "Let's see if he can do more than sweep floors." The main screen flashed again. System temperature critical. The hum of cooling fans deepened like a warning growl. Noah set his mop aside. "You'll need to cut the cross-sync between nodes 17A and 17B, he said quietly. "Right now they're fighting for the same heartbeat." The laughter stopped. The words didn't sound like guesses. They sounded like knowledge. Alicia tilted her head. "Fighting for the same heartbeat. That's poetic, Mr. Brooks. Shame this isn't a poetry club." He met her eyes. "No, ma'am. It's a timing error. If you keep both channels active, the core will fry itself before lunch." A red alarm blared overhead. The temperature gauge climbed another degree. One intern whispered that he was right. The readings matched cross-frequency interference. Alicia's smile faltered. "Fine. If you're so certain, prove it. Right here. Right now. 2 hours to restore the network, or you're done." She turned to her assistant. "Start the internal live stream. I want full transparency. Let the whole company watch what happens when people forget their place." Cameras blinked awake around the room. Notifications appeared across the company network. "Emergency operations test. Live now." Hundreds of employees tuned in. Comments scrolled across screens in disbelief. Who is that guy? Isn't he from maintenance? Why is Alicia humiliating him live? Noah didn't move. He rolled up his sleeves and knelt beside the equipment cabinet. His hands, rough from years of labor, hovered over the server interface like a pianist before the first note. For the first time, Alicia noticed the small silver pin on his uniform, a stylized circuit trace forming the letter Sigma. It wasn't part of company attire. The server fans screamed. Blue sparks flickered at the base of the rack. Someone shouted to shut it down before it melted. Noah looked up, calm. "If you shut it down now, you'll lose the synchronization window permanently." "Then what do you suggest?" Alicia snapped. He held her gaze. "I suggest you let me listen." The words hung in the air. He placed his ear near the humming chassis, fingers lightly touching the metal casing. For everyone watching, it looked absurd. A janitor listening to a dying machine. But after 10 seconds, he whispered, "It's speaking in 2-time languages. One of them doesn't belong." A hush spread through the room. Alicia straightened. 2 hours, Mr. Brooks. After that, you're out." Noah stood, eyes fixed on the blinking server lights. "Then I'd better start translating." The countdown clock appeared on screen. 1 hour, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Outside the glass wall, the city kept moving, unaware that inside, One invisible man was about to rewrite the hierarchy of an empire built on arrogance. And somewhere deep inside the hum of the servers, Noah heard what no one else could. A rhythm, not random, not broken, just out of sync, waiting for someone who knew how to listen. Noah had worked in that building for 3 years. Every night, after the executives went home, he walked the corridors alone, pushing his cart past glass offices that still glowed with half-empty coffee cups and forgotten laptops. He liked the silence. Machines spoke more honestly when no one was talking over them. Before this job, he had been an engineer. Not a famous one, not from an Ivy League school, but a solid, careful mind who could trace a signal through a maze of circuits by instinct. Then, the world changed. His wife fell ill, and hospital bills consumed everything he had saved. The consulting firm he worked for collapsed in a merger, and overnight he became another resume, ignored by recruiters who wanted youth and pedigree. Maintenance was supposed to be temporary, but temporary has a way of stretching when you need the insurance. He never complained. He kept learning quietly, watching every system he cleaned, memorizing the rhythm of each server's hum. When others saw wires, he saw language. When they saw noise, he heard patterns. A mentor had once told him that every network was like a heartbeat. Perfect coordination mattered more than speed. When one pulse arrived a fraction late, everything began to drift. That lesson had stayed with him long after he left the labs and the patents behind. Now, with 2 hours ticking down, that same principle returned like a whisper. He crouched beside the failing rack, remembering how this company had started bragging about its dual synchronization design. 2 continents, 1 neural network, flawless redundancy. It sounded impressive until he noticed the small detail in a discarded report months ago. The European division used a time base written in Coordinated Universal Time, while the Chicago system still operated in Central Standard. It was a gap of 6 hours and 50 milliseconds, enough to confuse any machine that lived by precision. He had mentioned it once to a young technician during a late-night cleaning round. The technician had smiled politely and said, "Thanks, man. I'll tell my supervisor." Nothing ever changed. Noah had stopped offering suggestions after that. Sometimes silence was safer than being right. He adjusted his posture, feeling the warmth rising from the metal surface. The fans roared harder. On the big screen, the company logo flickered as if struggling to stay alive. In the reflection, he saw his own face, tired, unshaven, yet steady. "Mr. Brooks," said a voice behind him. It was Alicia's assistant, nervous now that half the company was watching the live stream. "They say the German team is already on their way upstairs." "How long?" Noah asked without turning. "An hour 45. He nodded once. "Then that's how long I've got." "Ass. In maids. And there reply there one is of them. Who have lift." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small drive, old and slightly scratched. It wasn't company equipment. Years ago, he had built it himself, a time-frequency sampler he once used in diagnostic work. He had kept it all these years, not for nostalgia, but because he trusted his own tools more than corporate ones. He connected it to the auxiliary port. The screen blinked, and a clean wave pattern began to form. The others saw only numbers. He saw motion, like 2 heartbeats, overlapping out of rhythm. He closed his eyes for a moment. The hum grew steadier in his mind, like an orchestra tuning before the first note. He adjusted one variable, then another. The server's heat dropped slightly. A technician nearby whispered, "He's stabilizing it." Noah ignored them. He wasn't doing this for them, or for the promotion Alicia had mocked him with. He was doing it because no system deserved to die from arrogance. He thought of his wife again, how she used to say that calm was its own kind of strength. When the doctors doubted her recovery, she smiled and said, "Let's fix what we can, one step at a time." That was how Noah lived now, one repair at a time, no matter who was watching. He checked the monitor. The drift between the American and European cores had narrowed by half. Sweat traced a line down his temple. He exhaled slowly. Alicia stood across the room, watching through narrowed eyes. The same crowd that had laughed earlier now whispered among themselves. The comments scrolling on the company feed shifted tone. "Who is this guy? How does he even know that? He's not supposed to be touching that equipment." one engineer said nervously. Alicia silenced him with a glance. Let him hang himself. The moment he breaks a compliance rule, I'll have it all on record. Noah heard her voice but stayed focused. Every machine spoke in frequency, in harmony, in patience. People broke faster than circuits did. He typed a short command sequence. The data pulses began to merge. The temperature stopped climbing. 1 minute of stability passed. 2, then 3. For the first time in weeks, the network's heartbeat began to align. Noah stepped back, wiped his hands, and stared at the pattern on the screen. It wasn't perfect yet, but it was breathing. He turned toward Alicia. You said 2 hours. I'll need all of it. But I'm not guessing. I'm listening. They appanations, parrot people. Alicia folded her arms, pretending not to show concern. Then you'd better hope that sound you're hearing knows what it's doing. Noah nodded once. So do I. The clock continued to tick down. The hum of the servers deepened, a single rhythm emerging from the chaos. Somewhere between patience and defiance, the man everyone ignored was beginning to speak the only language that ever mattered to him, the quiet, exact heartbeat of a machine trying to stay alive. The sound of the server room became the soundtrack of the company's tension. The air vibrated with the deep hum of power and the whispers of disbelief. On every floor, screens displayed the live broadcast. Engineers, interns, and managers who had never noticed Noah before now watched his every move. The chat feed filled with speculation. Some called it a stunt, others called it suicide. Alicia paced near the glass wall, her heels clicking against the polished floor like a metronome. Her expression stayed calm, but her eyes betrayed calculation. She had expected quick failure, a public lesson to remind everyone who ran the building. But now, the janitor's steady rhythm and the faint return of stability unsettled her. She could not afford to show it. Time check, she said sharply. 1 hour 22 remaining, replied her assistant. Noah stood in front of the console, motionless. His fingers hovered above the keyboard, adjusting sequences 1 line at a time. Each keystroke came after long pauses, as if he were waiting for the system to breathe before the next command. The cooling fans, once a desperate roar, began to even out. The temperature graph dipped slightly. Core temperature decreasing, someone whispered. He's actually doing it, another murmured. Noah ignored the voices. He thought in frequencies, not words. The drift between the 2 data centers was almost gone, but not completely. Something deeper was wrong. He leaned closer to the terminal and examined the diagnostic logs. Thousands of lines scrolled past. One caught his eye, a small string of code from the European servers, a synchronization script written months earlier. He zoomed in. Someone had added a manual override, a small command buried under layers of security. It forced the system to read local time rather than global time. That single choice had thrown the network into chaos. Noah's mind traced the origin tag automatically. It was signed with 3 letters, A, V. He exhaled slowly. Alicia Voss. She had inserted the override herself. He closed the log quietly. Exposing her wasn't his goal. Fixing the system was. He adjusted the counterweights of the timing algorithm, adding a short buffer code that retranslated both clocks to a neutral global standard. It was a simple solution, but elegant. 1 line to erase weeks of failure. The display blinked green for the first time in 42 days. Stability restored. A ripple of gasps filled the room. Engineers stared at the monitors as if they had just witnessed magic. Alicia froze mid-step. What did you just do? Listened, Noah said quietly. She walked toward him, her voice sharper. Be specific. He met her eyes. Your systems weren't wrong. They were arguing about who was right. I gave them a common language. That's not possible, one of the analysts said, scrolling through diagnostics. He realigned both time streams. I don't even know how he accessed those permissions. The German investors entered just as the tension peaked. 4 men in dark suits, accompanied by a translator, stopped at the doorway. Their leader, a tall man with silver hair, scanned the room. Alicia straightened instantly. Mr. Weiss, we are just completing a final test. Everything is under control. Noah didn't look up. He was running one last check, making sure the patch held. The investors watched in silence as the server lights shifted from chaotic red to steady blue. The hum softened, the temperature stabilized, and the system began processing at full efficiency. Core latency down to 0.05, one engineer whispered. That's better than theoretical. Mr. Weiss turned to Alicia. This is impressive. Who led the repair? Alicia hesitated for a breath too long. Our engineering team collaborated under my direction, and he was not there presses the tires places happened to doing. Noah stepped back from the console, wiping his hands. His face was calm, almost indifferent. He had done what he came to do. But the feed was still live, and the comments were exploding. They're lying. That's the janitor. He fixed it himself. How does she still talk like she did it? Alicia forced a smile. Our staff works as one. Weiss nodded slowly, still unconvinced. Good, because our board was close to canceling the contract. Noah began disconnecting his drive. But then, the system flickered again. A brief, almost imperceptible tremor ran through the data line. He frowned. The alignment was holding, but another subsystem was unstable. He rechecked the command history. The override Alicia had created had triggered backup timers across all subsidiary nodes. They would desynchronize again within minutes. The fix wasn't enough. He turned toward her. You inserted a local override in the European hub, didn't you? Her face tightened. Watch your tone. Thanks to Minishi pensive the clap and by the distide, Minishi pensive the sade. If you don't let me remove it, everything we just stabilized will collapse in half an hour. Do you have proof? She asked, her voice dropping. He looked at her steadily. Yes, but I'm not interested in blame. I'm interested in saving your company. The investors exchanged glances. Weiss folded his arms. Proceed. Alicia's expression hardened, but she nodded. Fine. You have 15 minutes. After that, we move on. He just another. Noah reconnected his drive and began tracing the hidden command paths. Sweat gathered along his temples, but his movements remained precise. The system's pulse quickened under his fingertips. The fans spun faster, temperature climbing again. A young engineer whispered, He's risking the core. If he's wrong, the entire network could burn out. Noah's eyes narrowed. Sometimes you have to push the system to hear what it's really saying. Hansard. He initiated a manual sync bypass, rerouting the timing protocol through his custom drive. The sound changed instantly. The hum deepened into a steady rhythm, low and pure. Every light on the rack turned blue. Weiss stepped forward. Is it done? Noah straightened slowly. It's balanced now. It won't drift again. Dr. Weiss glanced at the readings. Efficiency at 98%. Exceptional. He turned to Alicia. You have an extraordinary engineer. There. When we not play. In the thirds. Alicia hesitated, then said softly, Yes, I suppose we do. The live stream chat exploded with applause, emojis, and disbelief. Across the company, people who had never spoken to Noah before suddenly knew his name. He didn't celebrate. He simply unplugged his drive and said, The system's heartbeat is steady. That's all that matters. Weiss smiled faintly. You listen well, Mr. Brooks. Noah nodded once. It's what I was hired to do. When you in the stary. The room fell silent again, not with mockery this time, but with a kind of uneasy respect. Outside, the clock kept ticking. But for the first time, it wasn't counting down to failure. It was marking the moment when one man's quiet competence forced an empire to see what it had overlooked. And somewhere deep inside the servers, the rhythm continued, calm and sure, like a machine finally allowed to breathe. The silence that followed felt heavier than any alarm. No one moved, no one spoke. The server lights flickered in calm blue, and yet the tension in the room still pulsed like a second heartbeat. Alicia stood perfectly still near the window, her reflection caught in the glass beside Noah's. For the first time, her posture had lost its certainty. Across the company, the live stream didn't stop. Thousands were still watching. Comments multiplied faster than the moderators could delete them. Employees in other departments whispered to each other through private chats. The man who mopped the floors had just saved the system their executives had been losing sleep over for weeks. Alicia turned toward the investors, forcing her professional smile back into place. As you can see, our technical protocols are fully restored. We can move on to the financial review. Weiss didn't answer immediately. He studied the data feed on his tablet, then looked at Noah. "I'm curious," he said in his careful German accent. "How long have you been working here?" 3 years, Noah said quietly. Weiss raised an eyebrow. 3 years, and no one ever asked you to join the engineering division? A murmur spread through the room. Alicia's expression hardened. "Mr. Brooks is part of our facilities team," she said quickly. "His role is very important, but engineering requires specialized clearance and—" Weiss interrupted her without looking away from Noah. "I see. Yet he fixed what your team could not." The words landed like a clean cut. Alicia's throat tightened. "With all respect, he acted without authorization. If anything had gone wrong, we would have faced catastrophic losses." Weiss gave a small nod. "And if he hadn't acted, you would have lost the entire network. Which outcome would you prefer?" Alicia had no answer. Her assistant avoided her gaze. The engineers looked down at their keyboards, suddenly fascinated by their own screens. Weiss stepped closer to Noah. "What exactly did you change?" "I didn't change anything, sir," Noah said softly. "I just corrected a misunderstanding. The system was never broken. It was confused." Weiss smiled faintly, intrigued. "Confused? That is a good word for it. Perhaps the same could be said for people." The cameras kept rolling. The chat erupted again. Noah shifted his weight, uneasy with the attention. He wasn't used to eyes on him. He wanted to step away, to fade back into the quiet hum of the machines. But then Weiss turned to Alicia again. "Your engineers failed because they stopped listening," he said. "Innovation is not about degrees or titles. It is about attention. You have that here, if you choose to see it." Alicia's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, sir, this company has strict hierarchies for a reason. We cannot allow every employee to tinker with critical systems." Weiss nodded slowly. "You are right about that. But when hierarchy blinds you to competence, you stop leading." The room froze. Alicia's mask of confidence finally cracked. Her hand trembled as she reached for her tablet, though she quickly lowered it again. Weiss continued calmly. "In my country, we have a saying, 'Trust is not a gift, it is a result.' Today, this man earned it." He looked back at Noah. "Tell me, Mr. Brooks, why did you never speak up before?" Noah hesitated. "Because no one was listening, and it is looked on offense of good of Mengen." The simplicity of his answer silenced the room again. Even the hum of the servers seemed softer, as if acknowledging the truth in his words. Weiss glanced at Alicia one last time, then addressed the group. "My report to our board will mention this event. Not just the technical recovery, but the leadership it revealed. If your company does not know how to recognize that, perhaps ours will." He extended his hand to Noah. The gesture was calm, almost ceremonial. Noah hesitated for half a second before shaking it. Cameras zoomed in. Across the internet, screenshots spread like wildfire. The janitor shaking hands with the European investor while the executive stood frozen in the background. Alicia forced a polite smile. "We appreciate your cooperation, Mr. Weiss." He turned to her. "Yes, I am sure you do." Then, to Noah again, he said, "If you ever wish to work in Munich, our doors will be open." The words sent another shockwave through the room. Weiss and his team exited calmly, leaving behind a silence that no one wanted to break. When the door closed, Alicia finally spoke. Her voice was low and sharp. "End the live stream." Her assistant hesitated. "Ma'am, it's already viral. We can't—" "End it," she snapped. The feed cut abruptly. The room's screens went dark, leaving only the steady hum of the servers. Noah turned off his small device and placed it back in his pocket. He was ready to leave quietly, but Alicia's voice stopped him. "Do you think this makes you a hero?" she said coldly. "You embarrassed your entire department, you undermined protocol, and you risked the company's reputation for your own ego." He looked at her calmly. "I didn't do it for reputation. I did it because no one else would." Her tone sharpened. "Don't lecture me about responsibility. You're an employee who got lucky." Noah didn't flinch. "Luck didn't fix your system." To into the strange, and for a long moment, they stared at each other. The woman who built an empire on control, and the man who had just dismantled it with quiet competence. Then, Alicia exhaled slowly, voice trembling just slightly. "Get out of my sight!" Noah nodded once, picked up his mop, and walked toward the elevator. No applause, no speech. Just the soft echo of footsteps and the whisper of respect left in his wake. By the time the doors closed behind him, word had already spread through every floor. People looked up from their desks, whispering his name as though it were something new, something they had all overlooked until that moment. The janitor who listened had become the engineer who was finally heard. The morning after the incident, the city woke beneath a gray sky. Rain tapped softly against the wide glass of NorthLink Tower, and inside, the building no longer sounded the same. The usual chatter of keyboards and footsteps had been replaced by whispers. People didn't talk about sales reports or deadlines anymore. They talked about the janitor who had saved the company. In the executive wing, Alicia sat at her desk, staring at the news feed. Dozens of tech blogs had already covered the story. The headline appeared again and again. Maintenance worker prevents global network crash. Underneath, a single still image from the live stream. Noah standing calmly beside the humming servers, the blue lights glowing behind him like a crown of quiet authority. Her inbox was full of messages from the board, from the investors, from internal PR. The company wanted to turn the event into a success story. They wanted to praise team collaboration. But no one believed that version anymore. Downstairs, Noah clocked in at his usual time. The security guard greeted him differently now, with a nod instead of a glance. In the hallways, employees stopped talking when he passed. Some smiled, some looked away, unsure of what to say. He didn't need words. He just kept walking, the same steady rhythm as always. When he entered the data center, the server room greeted him with a sound he understood better than any voice. The hum was even calm, alive. The system had held through the night without a single error. He placed his hand on the metal casing, feeling the vibration like a slow heartbeat. Machines never lied, he thought. They just waited for someone patient enough to listen. Alicia appeared at the doorway. Her heels no longer struck the floor with their usual confidence. She hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Mr. Brooks," she said quietly. He turned, surprised to see her alone. "Ma'am?" She looked around the room, as if searching for the right place to begin. "The board has reviewed everything. They want to create a new technical oversight program. They're offering you the position." Noah blinked once. "A promotion?" "Yes, lead systems analyst, effective immediately." He studied her face. The arrogance was gone, replaced by exhaustion. "You don't have to do that," he said softly. Her voice trembled. "It's not my choice. It's theirs." He nodded slowly. "Then I'll accept, but only if I can keep cleaning." She frowned. "Cleaning?" He smiled faintly. "It's how I listen. The machines sound different when people aren't watching. I'd rather not lose that." Alicia looked at him for a long moment, then gave a small nod. "Do what you need to." She turned to leave, then stopped. "For what it's worth," she said quietly. "I was wrong about you." Noah nodded once. "You weren't wrong, ma'am. You just didn't know what to hear." She left without another word. Weeks passed. The story traveled far beyond the company walls. Students wrote about it in engineering forums, calling it the Janitor Protocol. The investors renamed the timing system he had created. They called it Brooks' Synchronization Standard. A quiet man's patience had become an industry benchmark. Noah never gave interviews. When reporters came to the building, he stayed in the server room, checking signals, calibrating frequencies, and cleaning dust from the fans. He liked to say that dust was the only thing that ever dared to argue with time. One afternoon, as the sun faded behind the skyline, the young technician who once ignored his warning approached him. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "they put your name on the main board upstairs, right next to the company mission statement." He looked up, startled. "That doesn't sound like something I need to see." "You should," she said softly. "It says, 'Listen before you lead.' They said those were your words." "I was like the setter." Noah smiled slightly. "They're not mine. They're everyone's. They just forgot for a while." The technician watched him for a moment, then asked, "Do you ever get tired of fixing what others break?" He wiped a trace of dust from the nearest console. "No," he said quietly. That's how the world keeps its rhythm. Outside the glass walls, the rain began again, soft and steady. The city lights flickered across the skyline like synchronized pulses. The servers hummed in perfect harmony, a sound that was neither loud nor proud, but steady and alive, the sound of something that had finally found balance. And in that room filled with quiet machinery, Noah stood still, listening. It was the sound of respect.